I worked the night shift at the hospital a few weeks ago. I'm 32 and have been a nurse for years. I've seen some strange things, but this night took the cake. The hospital is old, built in the 70s, with dim lighting that made the empty hallways feel even lonelier. I started my shift at 11 p.m., smelling antiseptics and stale air as I made my rounds. My first odd moment came when I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The doors opened and nobody was there. I stepped out and called for my colleague. The hall was silent, my voice echoing back to me. I shrugged it off, thinking I was just tired. As I walked past Mrs. Hargrove's room, I thought I saw a shadow move. I peered inside. She was sleeping, but I felt something was off. I blinked, and it was gone. Just the air conditioning, I told myself, ignoring the chill creeping down my spine. Later, I heard crying down the hall. It sounded soft, like a sad lullaby. I hurried to check on the patients, expecting someone to be upset. But when I got there, the area was empty. I stood still, an uneasy feeling growing in my stomach. Was I hearing things? The silence felt heavy, and I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. Next, I had to check Mrs. Hargrove's chart. I opened it, surprised to see notes I didn't write. It mentioned past traumas I never recorded. I stared, confused. Had another nurse been here? But I searched the floor, and it was just me. Then things got even weirder. Patients began telling me about dreams they had. They spoke of old hospital rooms, ones that hadn't existed for decades. I listened, fighting my growing fear. Were they all imagining things? Had something in the air messed with our heads? As dawn approached, I saw a figure at the end of the hallway. An old man stood there. He was shrouded in shadows, and when I called out, he vanished before my eyes. My heart raced, and confusion gripped me. What was happening? Just then, I heard someone whisper my name, soft and echoing. James. I whipped around, but there was no one in sight. My skin crawled. I felt a wave of panic. It was as if the hospital had come alive in the dark, drawing me into its secrets. I returned to the nurse's station, gripping the edge tightly. It was just me and the ghosts of the night. I wasn't sure what was real anymore. Was my mind playing tricks, or was there something more here? Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow a possible threat. I shivered and took a deep breath. I wanted to shake this feeling, to understand what was happening. But part of me feared what I might find if I looked deeper into this place. I didn't sleep at all after my shift ended. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together everything that had happened. The silence of my apartment felt heavy, almost suffocating. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me home, like a ghost hitching a ride on my back. The next day, I decided to return to the hospital when the sun was up. I needed to investigate what was going on. A warm afternoon light streamed through the windows, and everything looked different. The hospital appeared less sinister, but the memories of the night lingered in my mind. I approached the nurse's station and found Sarah, a colleague with years of experience. I knew I could trust her. "Hey, have you noticed anything strange lately?" I asked, my voice slightly shaky with uncertainty. She looked at me, her brow furrowing. "Strange? How?" I hesitated. I wanted to tell her everything, but part of me worried she'd think I was losing it. "You know, just odd things happening. Patients talking about old rooms or seeing things." Her expression shifted. "You mean like the old surgical wing? That part's closed off, but patients dream about it." I felt a chill run through me. "You've heard them too?" She nodded, biting her lip. "More than once. It's unsettling. It's like they're still attached to this place." Just then, a loud clang echoed from the direction of the break room. We both turned to look, eyes wide. It was just a coffee pot, but it felt as if something unseen had added weight to the sound. "Maybe it's nothing," I said, trying to downplay my nerves. Then why do I feel like something is watching us? Sarah replied, her voice barely a whisper. Before I could answer, the intercom crackled to life, a static noise filling the air. Help. Help. The voice was distant and wavering. We both exchanged worried glances. That wasn't part of the routine. It sounded like it was coming from the 3rd floor. Without thinking, I sprinted toward the stairs. Sarah followed, her footsteps echoing behind me. "James, wait!" she called. But I couldn't stop. I felt drawn to whatever was happening. As we reached the 3rd floor, the atmosphere changed. It felt colder. The lights flickered, casting strange shadows against the walls. I hesitated outside room 305, my heart pounding. "This is it," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stuck my head in. It was empty, but something felt off. The air was dense, heavy with a familiar scent, like antiseptic mixed with something rotten. Then I saw it, the old man from last night sitting in the corner. His face was turned away from me, his frail fingers tapping rhythmically against the arm of the chair. I felt my heart race, and I stepped back instinctively. "James, what's wrong?" Sarah whispered. I couldn't answer. I felt paralyzed. That's when I saw it, a dark figure looming behind the old man, whispering something I couldn't hear. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled back into the hallway. "We need to get out of here," I said, my voice shaky as I turned to leave. But I knew this was far from over. Whatever was happening in this hospital was just beginning, and I had to find out what it all meant before it consumed me completely. Running down the hallway, I felt like my heart might burst. Sarah was right behind me, breathless and confused. "What just happened in there?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I admitted, "but we're not safe here. We have to get more information, but where do we start?" Sarah glanced back at room 305, fear widening her eyes. "Let's talk to someone who's been here longer. Maybe they can explain what's going on." As we hurried down the stairs, I felt the weight of unseen eyes watching us. The hospital seemed to close in, walls constricting around the echoes of our panic-driven footsteps. We reached the lobby, and I spotted Mr. Thompson, the hospital's janitor, mopping the floor. He had been there for ages and might hold some of the answers we needed. "Mr. Thompson," I called, waving him over. He looked up, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "Everything all right, boys?" he asked, leaning on his mop. The gray stubble on his face did nothing to hide his tired eyes. "We just saw something strange on the 3rd floor," I said. "Can you tell us about any odd occurrences here? Anything at all?" His gaze shifted, and I could tell he understood the gravity of my question. "Odd?" he repeated, scratching his chin. "You mean aside from the usual?" "What do you mean?" Sarah pressed, urgency in her tone. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Let me tell you about the rooms that are closed off. There are stories, big ones. Sometimes patients get strange ideas about seeing long-gone doctors or having conversations with the past." A chill raced down my spine. "But it's just stories, right?" Mr. Thompson shook his head slowly. "You'd be surprised what sticks around. The old surgical wing. It's not just shut for renovations. People hear voices, feel things they can't explain." I exchanged a worried glance with Sarah. "Did something happen there?" I asked. "Oh, many things," he said, eyes distant as if recalling an old memory. "People go in and don't come out the same, if they come out at all." The words hung in the air like a thick fog. Suddenly the intercom crackled again, cutting through our conversation. "Help! Help me!" The voice was back, pulsing with desperation. Before I could react, Mr. Thompson's eyes narrowed. "That's from the old wing. It hasn't been operated in over a decade." Panic surged again. "We have to help them," I blurted, a mix of fear and determination filling my chest. "Or we might put ourselves in danger," Sarah warned, her voice shaking. I took a deep breath. We can't leave someone in trouble. We have to check it out. Come on. I started to move, but Mr. Thompson reached for my arm. You don't understand. They don't all want to be found. The air grew tense around us, as if the very walls of the hospital were holding their breath. I felt a knot of dread in my gut. I thought of the old man and the shadow I had seen behind him. Maybe Mr. Thompson was right. Maybe what we were about to face was much worse than anything I could imagine. I turned back, looking at Sarah. Are you with me? She nodded, fear painted across her features. But if we do this, we need to be careful. We headed toward the stairs again, the urgency of our mission pulling us in. But the deeper I descended into the mystery, the more I realized I was stepping into a web I might not escape. Just as we reached the door to the old wing, everything went dark. When the lights flickered back on, an all-consuming darkness had taken hold. But we were still standing in front of the old wing's door. A faint buzzing filled the air, and strident whispers brushed against my ears. I could see just enough to make out the peeling paint on the walls and the emptiness stretching beyond the threshold. Are you sure about this? Sarah whispered, her voice shaking slightly. I could feel her pain hanging in the air like a thick cloud. We can't ignore a cry for help, I insisted, though my voice wavered. We need to know what's down there. I pushed the heavy door open, the rusty hinges screaming in protest. The hallway was cold, far colder than the rest of the hospital. The further we ventured inside, the less light there was. My phone's flashlight flickered, the weak beam barely cutting through the gloom. I gripped it tighter, leading Sarah forward with hesitant steps. Every shadow seemed to jump at us, every sound echoed unnaturally. It's just the wind, I whispered, trying to convince myself as much as her. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, we reached another door marked Surgical Room 9. The handle was cold under my fingers and I hesitated. This is it, I breathed. Do you really want to open it? Sarah's eyes were wide, flicking between me and the door like she expected it to burst open at any moment. Someone's in there, I said, more to myself than to her. They need help. I turned the handle and opened the door. The room was in disarray, gear-strewn, machines unplugged. My heart dropped at the sight of an old surgery table covered in a brittle white sheet. I stepped inside, scanning the dark corners. Suddenly the air shifted, a chill enveloping me. Look, Sarah shouted, pointing at the reflection in an old mirror hanging on the wall. It took a moment for my brain to process what I saw, an outline, a figure standing behind me, cloaked in shadows. Panic surged through my veins. I spun around, but there was nothing there. My breath came in quick bursts, and I turned back to Sarah. Did you see that? Her face was pale, confusion written all over it. There was nothing, just us. That can't be right. They were there. There was... Before I could finish, the intercom blared again, harsh and jarring. Help me, they're coming. The voice was panicked, distorted. I recognized it as the same voice from before, but now it was laden with fear. My heart raced. It's coming from further inside, I said, stepping deeper into the room. Sarah grabbed my arm, shaking her head. No, we should go back. But I couldn't stop. My curiosity was a roaring flame, pushing me forward. That's when I noticed something on the floor, an old hospital ID badge. As I bent down to pick it up, a loud crash echoed from down the corridor. My blood ran cold. I froze for a moment, adrenaline flooding my senses. What was that? I whispered. I glanced at Sarah, and at that moment I knew we weren't alone anymore. Then everything went dark again. When the lights flickered back on, I found myself standing in the doorway of Surgical Room 9, heart racing. The air was thick with tension, and Sarah was visibly shaking beside me. We need to get out of here, she urged, her voice a low whisper. Instead, I stepped further into the room, the badge still clutched in my hand. It was an old employee ID, faded and worn. The name was barely legible, but something about it felt important. "What do you think happened to them?" I asked, trying to focus on anything but the shadows creeping around us. Sarah peered over my shoulder. "Who knows? But this place, it feels wrong." As I held the badge up to the faint light, a loud banging noise echoed from somewhere down the hall. It sounded like a door slamming shut. My heart dropped. "Did you hear that?" "Yes, we need to leave," she insisted, voice thick with fear. But just as I turned to urge her to stay, the intercom crackled to life again. This time it wasn't just a voice. There were screams, muffled but desperate, intertwined with a low, garbled static. "Get out. It's not safe." The urgency of the message drove a chill through me. "We can't just ignore this," I said. "Please." Sarah grabbed my arm. "They're warning us." But I was already moving toward the door at the end of the room. I had to know. "Stay close," I called back, pushing open the door that led into the next corridor. The moment we crossed the threshold, the air shifted. It felt electric, as if the very walls were alive. My flashlight danced across the walls, revealing peeling paint and old medical posters faded with time. But it didn't stop there. Beneath the noise of my breathing, I could hear something else, soft whispers flowing like a river of despair. "Can you hear that?" I breathed, glancing at Sarah. She nodded, but her eyes were wide with terror. Then I saw it, a flicker of movement in the corner of my vision. I turned just in time to catch the shadow darting behind another door. "Did you see that?" Sarah backed away, trembling. "Let's just go back. We can call for help." "No!" I shot back, frustration boiling beneath my fear. "We have to find out what's going on. We're already here." As I pressed forward, the whispering escalated. "Help us, please." The voices were insistent now, filling the corridor, wrapping around me like a shroud. Suddenly there was another crash, this time much closer, shaking the walls. I flinched, caught off guard. Sarah grabbed my hand, holding on tightly. "What was that?" she whimpered. "I don't know, but we need to keep going." I pushed open the door where I had seen the shadow. The room beyond was bathed in a sickly yellow light that flickered ominously. And that's when I saw it, a figure slumped against the wall, the same uniform as the badge in my hand. My breath caught in my throat. I took a step closer, hoping against hope that this was not another trick of the light. "Are you okay?" I called out. But as I reached out, the figure's head snapped up. It wasn't a person, it was something else entirely. Something I couldn't recognize. Before I could react, the lights blinked out once again. I stumbled back as the lights went out, plunging us into darkness. The air crackled around me. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear Sarah's breath, quick and frantic. "What was that?" she whispered. "I don't know," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Panic bubbled in my chest. I reached for my flashlight, fumbling as I turned it back on. The beam cut through the dark, revealing the room again. The figure was gone. My heart raced. Where did it go? I swung the light around, checking every corner. The shadow that had been there was now just empty space. "Let's get out of here." Sarah's voice quivered, cutting through my confusion. I nodded, irritated at how the dread was squeezing my chest, mixing fear and guilt into a potent drink. We turned to leave the room, but my eyes landed on the medical instruments scattered on a nearby countertop. They weren't just old, they were caked in something dark. A chill ran down my spine. "We need to go," I said again, urgency ringing in my voice. As we retraced our steps, the whispers returned. They seeped into my mind, becoming more coherent. "Help us," they said. Each word pressed on my conscience, igniting a sense of responsibility. "Please." I hesitated, the badge still clasped tightly in my hand as if it were a lifeline. We should just run, but instead, I felt pulled deeper into the shadows that now felt alive, pulsating with a desperate need. "Did you hear that?" I paused, staring into the dark. "Hear what?" Sarah whispered back, eyes wide with fear. "The voices. They're calling for help." I knew it was risky, but the urge to find out what lay behind those whispers gnawed at me. I could almost sense someone, or something, needed us to understand. "No, we should go." Her voice rose and panic returned as the walls seemed to close in around us. With one last deep breath, I turned, deciding to follow the whispers. As we moved toward the next door down the hall, a crash echoed again, louder this time. It was followed by a scraping sound, metallic and grating. We froze. "Please, let's go," Sarah pleaded, her grip tightening around my arm. "Just a little further," I urged. I pushed open the door, another flickering yellow light illuminating a small room filled with medical charts and old equipment. But something was off. The whispers were now almost a cacophony, echoing off the walls. And then I saw it. A series of photographs pinned to a corkboard. I stepped closer, squinting to see if I recognized anyone. My heart dropped as I noticed the faces. Each one bore that faded badge number, along with other names scrawled in red marker. "What is this?" I gasped. Sarah stepped beside me and we read the names in silence, fear overtaking our curiosity. Then, a loud bang from the far end of the room made us jump. My flashlight flickered, and the door slammed shut behind us. "We're trapped," Sarah cried, panic spilling out. I pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. In that moment, I knew we were not alone. "Help us." The voices seemed louder now, closing in. And that's when I turned, realizing the source of the whispers was right behind us. The room seemed to tremble as I turned around. I shone my flashlight into the darkness, and my pulse shot up. A shape loomed in the corner, indistinct yet clearly human. The shadows clung to it, making it look twisted and wrong. "Who are you?" I shouted, but my voice wavered. The figure stepped forward, and I saw the flickering hue of its face, a tight, ghostly smile that froze the blood in my veins. It didn't speak, but I felt that same desperate urge for help emanating from it, as if the very air we breathed had turned cold with torment. "Get away," Sarah yelled, grabbing my arm and pulling me back. "We have to go now." Her fear was infectious, sending adrenaline surging through me. I turned to the door. It had to open. I slammed my shoulder against it, desperation fueling my strength. But it wouldn't budge, and I could feel the panic rising like bile in my throat. "Help us." The voice came again, clearer now. It was a chorus, multiple whispers blending together, begging, pleading. I was terrified, but somehow part of me felt drawn to them, all those faces I had seen on the photographs. They were not just echoes of the past, they had stories. "What do you want?" My voice came out sharper than I intended, reflecting my frustration. The apparition shifted in the shadows, seeming to shudder as if it were trying to reach out to me. "I can't," I began to say, but faltered. The whispers intensified, echoing through my mind. Was it guilt? Curiosity? I shook my head to clear the thoughts, but Trevor's face, one of the names on the board, flashed in my memory. It tugged at me. "Dylan, please," Sarah shouted again. "You're scaring me." I looked back at her, feeling torn. She was right. The pressure was becoming unbearable. "I'm sorry, Sarah, I can't just ignore them," I admitted. I glanced back at the figure, trying to draw comfort from its presence, but it stepped closer, no longer just a shadow. "Run!" Sarah screamed, and in that instant the door rattled as if something was trying to break through. Oh God! I gripped the flashlight tighter, feeling as if I were teetering on the edge of a cliff. I knew I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. The figure reached out, its bony hand stretching into the light. I felt the intense rush of wind fill the room, and then everything froze. The whispers dropped into silence. I blinked, standing frozen as my eyes locked onto the figure, realizing it wasn't just a lost soul. It was someone I recognized. "What do you want?" I managed to whisper, my heart pounding. But silence continued to hang thick in the air. And just as I began to hope, the walls around us began to pulse, as if the very building was breathing. The figure retreated back into the darkness, leaving us alone with our fear, and the door began to creak open, slowly, ominously. "Dylan." I heard Sarah's voice tremble next to me. Then footsteps echoed behind us, sharp and deliberate. I turned, instinctively raising my flashlight, but there was nothing there. "Let's go." I took a step toward the doorway, but my instinct held me back. Something was wrong. We were not alone. And that's when the whispers returned, louder than ever, wrapping around us like a shroud. The air felt thick, charged with a restless energy that made my skin prickle. I turned toward Sarah, whose wide eyes reflected pure terror. "We need to figure this out. We can't just leave," I said, though doubt gnawed at me. "Are you insane? We need to get out of here," she hissed, pulling me closer to the door. But something about her urgency only amplified my fear. The whispers morphed into something more frantic, growing louder, rising and falling like a wave. The sound echoing around us, creeping down my spine. I hesitated again, torn between the unexplained pull of that figure and Sarah's plea. As I turned back, the space between us and the oppressive presence at the corner seemed to contract. The whispers shifted, some words emerging barely discernible. Help, lost, and forgotten, intertwined. "That's it," I whispered, the connection clicking for me. "They want us to find out what happened to them. They need us to remember." "Dylan, stop." Sarah tugged at my arm, her eyes darting to the doorway as if searching for an escape. "Please." That's when the flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows on the walls. I tightened my grip, but felt the light slipping. I had to make a choice. What if there's something here that we can help with? "It could be important," I said, more to convince myself than her. Her expression hardened. "And what if it's just a trap? We can't risk it. I'm not letting you play hero at a time like this." I took a deep breath, and then I saw it. A glint of something on the floor near where the figure had stood. It caught the beam of my flashlight, a small object shimmering faintly. "Wait," I said, pointing it out. "What's that?" As I knelt closer, I could see it was a piece of jewelry, a tarnished locket. The state of it told me it had been lying there for a long time. "Look, Sarah, it could belong to one of them." Before she could respond, the air shifted again. A palpable surge of energy that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. I felt the locket pull at me, almost vibrating with something beyond the physical. But as I reached out to touch it, the lights overhead flickered violently. Shadows danced across the walls, merging and splitting as if a storm was brewing. "We need to leave now." Sarah was frantic, her voice slicing through the chaos. I grabbed the locket and clutched it tightly, rising to face her. "No, just give me a second," I said, but the whispers ramped up, swirling around us like a gale. Suddenly I felt a rush of cold air against my skin. "Dylan!" Sarah screamed. And that's when I saw it, a face emerging behind her, wreathed in darkness but unmistakably human. My heart dropped. "I found it," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. The face moved closer, the tension in the air thickening. The locket felt hot in my palm, as if reacting to whatever presence loomed behind Sarah. "Stay back," I shouted. But my defiance felt weak against whatever force had beckoned me deeper into this haunting. It was too late for retreat. A shiver ran through me as I realized we had crossed a crucial line. The whispers now grew into a roaring chorus, drowning out all reason. But in that moment of collective fear, I knew one thing for sure. The locket held the key. I just had to figure out what it meant before whatever was in that darkness consumed us entirely. Then everything went dark. I gasped, the darkness swallowing me whole, its weight nearly suffocating. The frantic whispers fell silent, replaced by a stillness that made every nerve in my body scream. Panic surged within me, and I fumbled for the flashlight, my fingers trembling as I clicked it back on. A narrow beam flickered to life, illuminating the room in eerie tones of grey. "Dylan?" Sarah's voice quivered from somewhere nearby. I turned, desperate to locate her in the swirling shadows. "Where are you?" "I'm right here," I called out, my voice too loud in the oppressive silence. I waved the light, searching for her familiar outline. The shadows were thick, swallowing everything in sight. Then I saw her, just a few feet away, looking lost and scared. Relief washed over me. I thought, that thing. Her eyes darted past me, locking onto the shadowy figure that had been hovering before us. I turned again, and there was nothing but darkness. I swallowed hard. "It was here," I said, forcing myself to sound braver than I felt. "I think it wants us to understand something about the locket." My grip tightened around the cold metal, the heat still pulsing in my palm. As I stepped closer to Sarah, the whispers returned, now faint and distant like echoes from a forgotten place. "It's just the two of us," I said, but even I could hear the doubt lacing my words. "Do you even know what you're getting us into?" she replied, panic simmering beneath her calm facade. "We don't know what that thing is." Before I could respond, the locket in my hand suddenly felt alive. The sensation reverberated through me, pulling me further into whatever mystery this was. "Maybe it's a message," I murmured, my eyes narrowing as I focused on the locket. "I don't care if it's a message. We need to get out of here." Sarah's voice raised with urgency, reminding me of the danger lurking in this place, of the unseen entity that I had almost forgotten in my fixation with the locket. "I can't leave," I confessed, and it felt like surrender. A part of me wanted to know more, to tap into whatever connection this locket had with the figure. "There has to be something here." "Then we'll figure it out together." Sarah relented, her resolve washing over me like a tide. Her fear melted into determination, and we both felt the palpable weight of the moment. "Just promise me we won't stay too long." I nodded, the light reflecting off the locket, which now seemed to shine with an inner glow. I peered closer at it, searching for any sign, any engraving that could lead us to answers. That's when I noticed a faint inscription. It was barely visible, obscured by age. "Sarah, look," I said. "There's something on the back." I held it up for her to see. The light caught the worn letters, but it wasn't enough. "Can you read it?" she asked urgently. I knelt down, squinting at the tiny letters. Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled slightly, as if affirming something profound. It says, "Remember me." As the words left my mouth, everything around us began to shift again. Sarah gasped as the atmosphere thickened. The whispers transformed into a single voice, a command laced with desperation. "Help us. Remember us." The shadows flickered and twisted, closing in as if responding to the message. I felt the temperature drop sharply, the air electrified with an unseen power. "We have to go," Sarah screamed, but I was frozen, my pulse racing. The locket burned against my skin, and the voice grew louder, insistent. Then, with a violent rush, the lights overhead exploded, showering us in a cacophony of glass and darkness. And that was when I knew whatever was awakening in this abandoned hospital wouldn't let us go so easily. I bolted upright, disoriented. The flashlight flickered but held steady. The whirring silence was a stark contrast to the chaos that had just enveloped us. The luminous locket lay cold in my palm. I glanced around. Everything seemed eerily still, each shadow holding its breath. "Dylan?" Sarah's voice broke the silence, soft yet scared. I turned to see her crouched against the wall, her light trembling in wide arcs. I rushed to her side. "I'm here," I said, relief flooding me. I was grateful to see her, but that sense of safety was fleeting. Whatever had happened moments ago felt like the calm before a storm. Suddenly, the intercom crackled back to life, a distorted echo bleeding through the static. "Help us! Help us!" The voice was haunting, a desperate chant swirling through the emptiness. "What do you think it wants?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide and fearful. "Maybe we should just leave." "No," I interrupted, startling her. "We need to understand. There's something significant about what we saw. That locket." The urge to piece the mystery together tightened its grip on me. I glanced around the room, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. I knew I was teetering on the edge of something I couldn't quite comprehend. That shadow figure, the whispers, everything felt connected to the secrets buried within these walls. With the locket still clutched tightly, I stepped closer to the remnants of what appeared to be an old patient chart still pinned against the wall. My flashlight revealed the faded details, the records of patients, their treatments, their outcomes. One patient's name leapt out at me. Trevor, the name from the badge. "Sarah, look," I pointed, but as she came to my side, the air grew colder, carrying an unsettling weight. "It's the same name. We have to find out what happened to him." Before she could object, I grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the surgical room. The voice. It felt so real. It needs us to acknowledge them. But as we moved toward the door, the whispers escalated, wrapping themselves around us like a suffocating fog. "Remember us. Help us." The sorrow imbued within each word seeps into my bones. Then, without warning, the lights flickered again, this time stronger. Shadows danced, and amidst the chaos a figure appeared, not the specter from before, but a swirling mass of dread and despair. It coalesced, forming the outline of a man, but just as quickly the shape disintegrated into a cloud of darkness, leaving nothing but dread lingering in the air. "What the hell was that?" Sarah cried, panic flooding her voice. "It doesn't want us to leave," I uttered, realizing how deep this was running. "But I can't ignore this. We can't ignore this." "Dylan, please." Her voice trembled. "You don't know what you're doing. This could be dangerous." I understood her fear, but the ache of the past clung to me, pulling me closer to the unknown. "We just have to figure out Trevor's story. Maybe it's the key to making sense of all this, to freeing them." As I turned, the locket seemed to pulse, and the whispers swelled, coalescing into a single voice soaked with anguish. "Remember." And at that moment something shifted in the air, a promise of revelation, of truth wrapped up in the thick fog of the hospital's memories. "Dylan, listen." Sarah's urgency was palpable. "If you want to remember, we have to find a way to break whatever this is. We can't let it trap us forever." A part of me knew she was right. As the oppressive weight of the shadows pressed in on us, I hesitated. The thought of abandoning the truth gnawed at my core. There was something powerful in those unfulfilled tales, in the souls that lingered like ghosts, but this wasn't a game. The very walls seemed alive with dread, whispering warnings I couldn't ignore. "Okay," I relented, my resolve wavering. "Let's get to safety first, then we can find a way to uncover what's happened." Her nod was a mixture of relief and fear. I turned, and together we hurried down the hallway, the locket safely tucked away but somehow still resonating with energy. The shadows followed, uncomfortable and watchful, as if everything was on the edge of a precipice. As we retreated, the emergency lights began to flicker back into focus, illuminating the dull corridor once more. I felt an unsettling sense of having escaped the jaws of something far greater than just the fear of the darkness. We had survived for now, but the whisper still echoed menacingly in the back of my mind, a reminder that the mysteries buried within the hospital's walls were far from over. In that moment of fading danger, a million questions filled my mind. Was it truly just the darkness of the hospital? Or was there something more beyond our understanding? And whatever had happened to Trevor and the others remained an open wound, one I felt compelled to address, even if part of me knew it might never cease to haunt me. As we reached the stairwell, the intercom crackled out a final warning. "Don't forget us." And deep down, I knew it wouldn't let us go untethered. Not yet.